Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us today for this webinar with Margot Note. My name is Bradley, and I will be your moderator for this webinar titled Unlocking Potential Through Collaborations. Before we start, I would like to provide some information about our company and introduce today's presenter. Lucidea is a software developing company specialized in museum and archival collections management solutions, as well as knowledge management and library automation systems. Our brands include Sydney, Presto, Argus, Archivera, Eloquent, and Quadrastar. Now I would like to take a moment to introduce today's presenter, Margot Note. Margot Note is an author, archivist, and records manager helping individuals and organizations harness their history. As a principal of Margot Note Consulting LLC, she facilitates the understanding of the importance of unique collections, suggesting ways to manage them and to use them to tell stories to connect with people. She is also a popular guest author for Lucidea's Think Clearly blog and has provided us with many great webinars that are listed on our website, so please feel free to check those out after today's session. Take it away, Margot.
Thank you so much. So I want to talk today about collaboration and collaboration in the context of archives and advocating. A lot of internal advocacy is part of this webinar series. So obviously collaborations are about building relationships. We want to seek allies within our organization and outside of our organization, people that share our vision, and it helps amplify our impact and it fosters knowledge sharing. I feel like I say this in every webinar, but people don't necessarily know what we do as archivists. It's very black box. It can be a little bit mysterious, and we're not always the best at letting people know what we do. I feel like I've said this a million times. Like, we know what accountants do, even though we've never done any accounting. But like, what do archivists do? People aren't really sure. And so I think one powerful way of doing internal advocacy within your organization is collaboration, where you really can share that knowledge in a way that's showing, not telling. We can say, we do really valuable work, we're very helpful, but it's a whole other thing to actually show it and prove it to our colleagues. So I feel like, I'm the constantly advocating for project management. And I think projects are a very specific way that we can use collaboration to do internal advocacy. I think, the everyday tasks of archivists, if we do them well, they're kind of invisible. You don't really see it. But projects are a way to do something different, to move forward the organization, to move forward our department, to move forward our own professional career. And it's a way that we can really demonstrate how collections benefit organizations. It involves strategy and kind of forward thinking, kind of big picture thinking. As archivists, we tend to maybe look at the details, and it's really important for us to also think big picture. And then it helps expresses the organization's vision and priorities. So we want to make sure of all the projects we can possibly do, we're choosing things that align, and we're choosing the best possible projects and that align with our organization. So collaboration strategies involve seeking departments that we can work with, and aligns with utilizing records, so specific records that we have that we can generate. It initiates conversations, and it uncovers shared interests. But what I love about archival work is that you really learn by osmosis through working with different types of clients, with different types of colleagues, different types of departments. You really get a sense of what they do through the records that they generate and that we preserve. So 3 things kind of build into a successful dynamics of collaboration. We need an environment that fosters it. We need to have memberships of this collaboration or partnership. That's a positive investment. And then there's also process and structure of the project and of the collaboration. So I'll go through some examples and what I mean by these kind of 3 pillars. Successful collaboration dynamics are also communication, purpose, and resources. And I think that's the resources that is the key thing here, because I feel like people don't really understand that, archival work requires labor, requires budgets, requires money. And so I think that's an important thing to think about. We can't just pull these things out of the air. We do need some resources. And I think when you have a project, you can really you can use that to kind of advocate for resources. Like, you want us to do this project or that project. Well, then where are we going to get that money? Is it going to be part of the budget line? Is it going to be part of a grant that we apply to? Can we move money within the organization because this is a priority project? And again, this is where we can really, ask for resources and resource allocation. The environment for collaboration, we really have to have a cooperative history. So ideally, you have an environment where people are used to working with each other, there's no real silos, and that there's kind of a sharing of information. It's a favorable work environment that establishes trust and a positive atmosphere. So I'm thinking about kind of two current clients I have right now, and they're kind of two different environments, but they still kind of work in this collaborative structure. So I have one client where it's a very flat organization. There's a lot of discussion about what needs to be done, a lot of committees, a lot of buy-in and policy creation, and it tends to move very slowly, but they're really trying to get a lot of buy-in. And people within those departments are used to working together. So we're doing a major change. We're kind of developing a new department that I've kind of come on to help them kind of figure out what that's going to look like, the hiring, policy creation, all of that that's around kind of archives, records management, knowledge management. It's a big change for the organization, but they're ready to move forward. So that's a kind of unique environment where I had to really rely on the team of people I'm working with internally to tell me like what the organizational dynamics are within that organization to have people get some buy-in for this project. Another kind of on the other scale is a university system that I'm working with. And that has a lot of tiers of kind of influence and power, but it tends to have a lot of collaborative environment among peers of the same level. So I'm working with the academic, kind of the central office, the academic central office. And so there's a lot of collaboration about this one major change management project that we're doing there as well. And so that's helpful. That's kind of a different way of, there is some kind of different levels of like how to communicate to, let's say, a dean, a vice dean, a chancellor, et cetera, et cetera. There's a lot of power dynamics. And so with that environment, we're working collaboratively through departments of people kind of on the same tier, but then they're also helping me tap into the power and influence within those departments to talk to kind of the upper levels that has a lot of kind of silo of information. So again, it really just depends on the environment that you're working in. And I would advise, you have to go with the grain, like whatever type of environment that you have, don't try to communicate in a way that's kind of that doesn't work. You have to have some kind of political agility and some type of emotional intelligence to read people and figure out how you can work with them and how you can advocate for your archives within that environment. There's also membership to think about when you're collaborating or thinking about projects or partnerships within your organization. So you want people to have mutual respect, obviously. It has to be a diverse participation. And so diversity in that sense can mean a lot of different things, different departments, different age groups, different power dynamics, for example, different power and influence that people have. So it's really thinking about having multiple perspectives. You don't want everyone just to have one kind of lens that they're looking through, because if another department or another type of employee or generation type, for example, uses this project, they might it might be limited in what you're thinking about. So you really want that diverse kind of participation and experience in the memberships of whatever collaboration you're working on. You're thinking about, you obviously want people that see the value in the collaboration, that see there's a purpose. I've worked in, and this is before consulting, but kind of in my old 9-to-5s, we take on, and this kind of got me into project management. I take on one particular project I'm thinking about, which is something that the CEO really wanted, and they were pushing for it, and it was we were partnering with a publisher, a pretty significant museum, some individual writers and photographers, and then a marketing, like a marketing agency, advertising agency. And it was something that like no one, no one really wanted to do, especially me. And it resulted in a deliverable that it was delivered, but it wasn't really to anyone's satisfaction. So again, you want to make sure that you have people that kind of see the vision, that want to be that want to participate, that aren't kind of voluntold to be part of this project. They see the value of it. They have the ability to compromise, to be able to say, you know, I'm willing to give this up if I get this. Like people that can be kind of flexible and adaptable to other viewpoints. Again, tapping into that diverse participation. People have it, you know, multiple viewpoints of how to move forward, let's say with a project, everyone's listened to, and then you decide kind of how you kind of work within the system. And then you want to build a culture of commitment. So people that are excited about the project, that are committed. And again, that's the way you kind of reel people into archives and seeing the value of archives is showing them through projects and their membership. They feel like they have some type of ownership and an understanding of what archivists do. We also have to think about process and structure. So that means adaptability, continuous learning, evaluation, efficient workflows, and ongoing improvement. So when I see this slide, I'm thinking about a particular recent project I've done. And it's for an estate of an artist. Well, someone that was even more wide than an artist, but I'll call him an artist. And so I was this kind of subcontractor, work as a partner with this company that is processing and preserving his archives, and a lot of his archives in a very broad sense, because he worked and he had a lot of personal materials, a lot of 3D like an art materials, but also papers. And so I was brought in to help them figure out how to work with the papers. And this was something that like they didn't really know how to do, and some of their people that they're working with were kind of not didn't really know. So I was the expert. And so in a 48 hours that I had with them, we basically went through some boxes of these materials that were kind of flown in from all these different offices he had and homes that he had, and it was very kind of chaotic, as most personal or individual or family archives are. There's like a lot of stuff that was kind of put in a box that the movers basically like threw in a box. So part of that process is that we were thinking about, okay, how do you, I think the initial, and maybe I'm going on a bit of a tangent, but the initial idea was that they wanted everything, processed to a finding aid level or even an individual level, which was not kind of archival thinking. And I thought, well, what we should do first is do like a rough sort, because the context or the provenance of where the stuff came from was so jumbled up. It didn't, in the end, it really didn't matter. And there was such diverse materials and storage needs, because we knew that these materials would have to be preserved for perhaps decades until the family figured out what to do. So in other words, we sat together and we kind of figured out a workflow to do kind of a rough sort based on importance and format of the papers, and then kind of some another kind of second sort. All this to say is that we kind of figured out what to do from that initial conversation, and we're going to write documentation about it. But obviously what you envision, so like what we thought was going to happen, or what the client thought was going to happen on before the meeting, like what the workflow was, changed on day one, change on day two, is going to change, a month from now when we have continuous calls about how this workflow is going to go, because we're going to learn more. And I think that's what's so interesting about collaboration, is what you kind of envision what the project or the workflow is going to look like totally changes by the end of the project, and it should, if you think you know a project in the beginning, then I don't think it's ambitious enough. Like there should be some change. And so how do you adapt to when you find out more information? How do you make sure the workflow is efficient? There might be steps that you no longer need, or you might find a way to do things easier, like photograph a collection easier, or whatever you're doing. So really think about the process and structure of these collaborations and making sure that they're constantly improving and you're learning as you're working with the project. Communication is important too. Having frequent communication, establishing informal and formal strategies, as well as facilitating information flow. So I'm thinking of a project that I have now, which is like we procured software. It's currently being implemented, and there's a lot of materials being ingested. So there is these kind of informal weekly meetings with the vendors that sometimes, sometimes we skip them because we don't need them. Sometimes they're 10 minutes long, sometimes they're 40 minutes long. They're very informal. There's some type of agenda for the vendor, but of course, like we're just kind of chatting and seeing what comes up. And then we have more formal meetings where every 2 weeks we're meeting with more decision makers with the client. And then we're also having even more formal communication, like let's say in emails, or, right now we're strategizing how to roll out the communication strategy. So making sure the executive stakeholder or executive sponsor of the project has some type of talking points to talk about in her cabinet meetings, and giving her some email drafts that she can send out so people know it's coming from her, and then we will follow up with each department as we implement and set up the software for each department. So again, there's different levels of communication. I think what's important is to have some type of cadence and not necessarily make your communication like ad hoc or like as problems arise. I've found that, I'm speaking from experience where I think in the past, as an archivist, I'd only communicate if there was a problem or if there was like an issue or something like time sensitive, where I think especially if you're advocating within your organization and you're really thinking about how to participate and collaborate, to making sure that you have scheduled communication. And that might be, meetings that you have in your calendar. That might just be a reminder every month to reach out to this person or that person. That's more your reminder. But again, having communication they're constantly kind of reminded that you're there and you have stuff that can help them make their working life easier. So there's purpose and resources too to think about when you're collaborating with departments. You want to make sure you have attainable goals and objectives, things that are realistic. I'm guilty of myself of being totally ambitious and like not having goals and objectives that are not based in reality. So I have to kind of pull things back, make a more realistic schedule. I find, especially because I'm a one-person business, I can move very quickly, where other people should have a little bit of structure and time and thinking about things. And some type of approval workflow would make sense with an organization. But I sometimes have to cool my jets a little bit because I expect things to be done instantaneously because I can do that. You have to have a shared vision. You have to have sufficient funds. That's, I think, the main thing. And it's funny that I say this because right now I'm in the process of writing a book that'll be out in 2025 or 2026, I think, about that's writing about finance, like financial basics for archivists. So what do archivists need to know about budgeting and resource allocation and grant management and, reading 990 forms and all that kind of stuff that's not necessarily the most fascinating, but really helpful, that we have to, archives cost money. So we have to think a little bit in a capitalist society, it's all about money. So we have to play that game. So really thinking about sufficient funds, if the organization wants things done, we can't just make it come out of the air. There has to be part-time employees or overtime or contracting out or something, or moving around responsibilities so this project can be done. You need someone that is very skilled at being a project manager, that can kind of look at what's happening with the project, that everyone can come to, that has a certain amount of trust. And it's also, project management is all about influence without authority. So you're sometimes, as a project manager, you're asking people that might be way above you in the organizational structure to do things for you that are outside of their normal duties. And so you have to, again, have to have some emotional intelligence and a little bit of charisma, or riz, as the kids say, to really move a project along. And you want to have engaged stakeholders, ideally. That's what a successful project is all about, or a collaboration. You want people that care about what you're doing. And a lot of times it's showing how it benefits them directly. Again, you can say archives are very valuable. We have significant holdings that are historically valuable, that are fiscally valuable, but like people, what's in it for me? I think you have to think about that. So how can you um, how can you give a message to the organization, to your stakeholders, that this is a valuable collaboration that's going to specifically help them and make their life easier in some way? And we'll go over some of these value propositions later on in this slide deck. So I just want to pause and have you just think about, within your organization, kind of ask yourself some questions. So how can I enhance the environment to promote collaboration? How can I emphasize the value of collaboration? How can I contribute to a shared vision for collaboration? And how can I engage stakeholders? So again, thinking about, you have to go to your colleagues. They're not necessarily going to come to you. Someone who's perhaps knowledgeable and skilled about archives kind of will perhaps know what you're doing, but a lot of times we have to go to them. That's just the nature of the work that we do, and we're in a customer service type of job. So we serve our users, we exist for our users. So thinking about, what are some easy wins that you can do to engage your stakeholders and to have them interested in perhaps some collaborations that they can work with you. So I think the awesome part, and I think what I touched on upon, is kind of working within disciplines. So as an archivist, when you're working with, let's say, a legal team, or you're working with a financial team, or program people, or marketing, or whoever you're working with within your organization, you learn a lot about like their subject matter expertise just by osmosis. And it's like so valuable. I found that I've learned about so many different subjects that I had no idea about, just by working on and taking on both doing client work, and then before in positions I held, just about all different types of subjects. And I think that makes me kind of a better archivist. It also makes me kind of a better, more informed person. So these collaborations help to bridge gaps. Having kind of interdisciplinary perspective supports collaboration across departments. It cultivates relationships, and it creates opportunities for knowledge exchange. So just as much as I'm learning about you, the departments are learning about archives. And again, it's showing, not telling. The classic line from kind of like fiction writing or literature. It's like you're showing how you're valuable, and they get to learn about all your expertise of everything that you're doing in a way that they wouldn't normally. Like, not a lot of people get kind of that peek behind the curtain. And I find that when people kind of start to understand, like, what is archival work, like what exactly are you doing, people are totally fascinated, but you have to kind of invite them into your world. And so these types of projects really kind of start to open that door, and people that are intellectually curious are going to be totally fascinated, and you're going to have allies for life. So connecting with allies is, again, initiative taking outreach. As I said before, like, you have to go to them. They're not necessarily going to come to you unless you've done a whole lot of work about being super welcoming to people. You never know. I think people think perhaps they're bothering you, or you're too busy doing something. I mean, I know that I used to work in an office where just the feng shui of this office was really bad, and my back would be to the door, which is just so unsettling for a variety of reasons. But people had legitimate questions that they wanted help with, but because of the positioning of this office, they felt like they were sneaking up on me, like they were impeding. I felt like I had no privacy. And I finally figured out, like, and I even had like a little mirror on my my monitor so I could see behind me, so I could see people kind of approaching me, so I could turn around and be more welcoming. I finally was able to get another office where I could actually welcome people. And I think even with that, again, that's another way of being open to and being having some outreach that people, I kind of put the word out that I could help them and they came to me, but I also like physically made that available as well. So there's ways that you can do organization-wide events, departmental meetings, workshops, lunches and learns about your archives. There's a variety of ways that are going to work within your organization, what people already like to do, or people are already open to doing. So you have to kind of work within your environment, but thinking about ways that you can, again, do that informal communication, formal communication, just kind of talk about the archives and make it kind of embedded a little bit more in your organizational culture. So tailoring partnerships. So you're thinking about collections to identify potential partners, addressing unique needs, and acknowledging distinctions. So thinking about, the collections that you have, what are some natural ways that you connect to your collections to your departments? I know at one position I had, anytime there was an anniversary coming up, anytime there was a change in the board, for example, anytime there was an anniversary of a specific project, I was able to, or maybe a new phase of a project, I wanted to really think about what that partnership would look like and kind of anticipate it with materials. And I thought that was that was an easy way to make that connection. You want to create opportunities. So thinking again, highlighting activities, collections, partnerships, you're supporting project development, and always kind of remaining vigilant for opportunities. So seeing what's out there that could be opportunities, someone retiring, someone moving on to a new position, you can help with get their records into the collection. You can welcome a new change in leadership, for example. There could be milestones, anniversaries, like what's going on within your organization that you can use as kind of a way to open the door to these collaborations. So communicating the value proposition is you really want to think about, again, kind of what is in it for people, that why would they want to collaborate with you? So, you can enhance projects, contributes to informed decision-making, it demonstrates benefits. You can think about case studies or success stories. So thinking about, what can the archives value that has a certain type of value proposition? And so I'm going to go through kind of some examples of what these might be within an organization. And obviously, this is dependent on what type of organization that you have, the size of it, if it's profit or nonprofit or governmental. It all basically changes, but there are so many valuable value propositions that you can offer. So obviously, one of the easiest ones is something, can you do something with the archives with a collaboration that saves time, money, or effort? Are there ways that you can exceed user expectations in projects that you're doing? That might be internal users or external users. How can you enhance usability, accessibility, and services with the archives, or help a department do that as well? How can you fulfill user needs? So thinking about users, both internal users and then external users as well. How can you improve quality, performance, and design for better experiences? How can you minimize frustration? So a lot of times we're thinking about what you can do more of, but actually what can you make easier or less frustrating, or if you can take away, except can you simplify things? That's a way that archives can help as well. Oops. How can you simplify tasks? So again, taking away the complexity. How can you make something very simple, remove obstacles? How can you mitigate risks? I think archives are really kind of under-tapped in this, especially you have records management. I mean, it's all about mitigating risks, right? How can you address issues? Are there things outstanding within the organization that are not urgent, like the burning fires that people have to put out, but are important? And unfortunately, the tasks that are important or the projects that are important kind of stay there for a while. They're not urgent, so they're still important. So a lot of times archives can address these important needs. And how can you eliminate worries? So, I mean, that's again kind of thinking about how can you minimize frustration? How can you streamline processes and workflows? So again, this is I find this very helpful when there's a change in um, employees or leadership within the archives department. So what was done before, you don't necessarily want to continue doing. I think that's just as important to help figure that out. I've had clients where they've really inherited kind of legacy and technological debt and kind of complex processes that came from kind of a less digital era, and people perhaps maybe stuck in a certain way or stuck in a certain perspective. And now you have kind of fresh eyes, so you can start to think about how can we automate things? How can we use technology to our benefit? How can we streamline these processes and workflows given what we need to do right now? How can you ensure customer service and support? And again, how can you foster collaboration? So really thinking about how can you make your alliances stronger within the organization? Providing personalized experiences for your colleagues. Like, how can you help them specifically? This is especially important for people that are decision makers that have a certain level of power and influence. How can you make their life easier? And it can be really simple. I found that digitizing, documents that were in paper files that people were referring to, like I won over someone that was like did not see the benefit of archives at all with like maybe 2 hours of work. And again, it's something that was important, not urgent. And I made his life so much easier. And I kind of won an ally for life with like such a little amount of work. But the value proposition was that I made his life easier. He could just click a button. Um, and for him, I think he just thought digitization was like too complicated. I'm not really sure, but I mean, it was something that I could do with my eyes closed, and I really helped him. And it was just I was able to see that opportunity, and I took advantage of it. Can you offer scalability or flexibility in your processes? How can you meet changing needs? So how can you support continuous learning and improvement within the organization? So those are all examples of value propositions that you can offer your colleagues. So you want to make sure when you're forging alliances, you're again communicating openly, respecting diversity of thought, diversity of perspectives, of opinions, of priorities of people, making sure that people feel like they have buy-in, that they're being listened to, and then establishing roles and responsibilities. We want to make sure that we're boosting morale with these collaborations. So we want to make sure we're committing to continuous learning. We are celebrating successes together. So when a project or a collaboration goes really well, we really acknowledge it. I think far too often we finish something and we kind of put it away and we don't really have a little bit of time to celebrate. And then maintaining regular contact. So making sure if you've had a really good experience or a really good project with the department, you're kind of making sure and checking in if they still need your help. If there's other projects you can help them with, again, just like making sure you're taking advantage of the goodwill that you've created. And within collaborations too, you want to make sure there's a culture of trust. You're investing in personal relationships, and you do have to be patient. I think this does require some investment of time. Like you're not necessarily going to influence or advocate for the archives right away. It's not that simple. If it was that simple, everyone would be doing it. As does take some time. But I found that as you build trust and as you show that you're helping the organization and you're improving people's work environments and helping researchers, it really does make a difference and it builds up over time. So part of collaboration too is having a common purpose. So having a collaborative environment, setting shared goals and providing support. So making sure that, we all see things the same way. We're all on kind of the same page with the project or collaboration. And we're also not only doing that, but we're also assessing effectiveness. So thinking about strategies that you're using, making sure that you acknowledge individual contributions and practicing empathy. So really making sure that people feel anyone that you've participated with that has given you some feedback, some constructive criticism, that you acknowledge that. And I think constructive criticism is really helpful, because far too often people don't want to speak up. And with any type of team environment, there should be, like in team forming, there's kind of this storming stage. So that is good. We want people, we don't want people just to yes us to death. We do want a certain amount of feedback or constructive criticism. And when people are brave enough to do that, that trust us enough to do that, we want to be helpful, because then we can, and acknowledge their helpfulness. And because, I'd rather hear it from someone internal early on in the project than, let's say, much later on, where it could really mess up the project. So we're showcasing impact. So thinking about collaborative initiatives, we're quantifying the time and effort saved. I think so much of what we're doing, we're not really putting some metrics about it. And because it is kind of abstract and theoretical, like archival work, I think it's helpful to put some metrics about how you're saving time, effort, money, for example, in the work that you're doing. You're showing efficient information retrieval. Let's say, I had a project once where I was organizing something, and it used to take, people would ask for something, a bit of information or a particular file, and it would take me maybe a day to find it, because of just the backlog of materials. And once I handled that backlog, I could find it in less than 5 minutes, 2 minutes, instantaneously sometimes. And so that, again, was another level of trust, that once people saw that I could find things right away, that the archives room wasn't some black hole, people were giving me stuff. They were able to release that stuff, and that showed a real amount of trust. And I worked really hard to get to that level with that particular position. And improved resolutions through context. So really thinking about what's the context of the materials. And I think in archives, we're always thinking about the groups. So what do we gain when we have a full collection, and the information, rather than kind of individual pieces that are all over the place. So collaboration, sorry, we want to foster teamwork through collaboration. We want to share skills and expertise. We embrace a mutually beneficial approach, and we ensure that partners feel supported. So we want to make sure that we give back, and when we're working in a collaboration. An important part of collaboration too is leveraging technology. So using it for communication, project management, something like Basecamp or Asana or Trello, or whatever you're using. A lot of those systems are free. And there's Microsoft, your organization might already have some project management tools, that they're using. Resource sharing, you can coordinate tasks, you can track progress, you could share updates. So really using technology. I mean, we're living in such a world where we have, AI and all different types of technology. And I think one benefit of the pandemic was it kind of forced people to be much more, to use technology, that were kind of resistant. So let's take advantage of it now, and really leverage it to the strengths of our projects. So we want to make sure that our collaborations align with goals. So we're integrating the practices into planning, we're demonstrating relevance, and then positioning archival work as essential to goals. So again, we're collaborating, we're doing these projects, but kind of the subtext of all of this is internal advocacy. So we're showing that, skilled, educated archivists can do this work, and it gets us to a different level. It's essential to the work that we're doing, really proving it. And we have to prove it by doing. This is not a theoretical idea. We have to put it into practice. And that's how you gain followers and allies. So we're also fostering learning through collaborative projects. So there could be training sessions related to projects. You're encouraging curiosity and exploration, and equips team members for collaborative projects. So really thinking about, how can we foster learning in a new environment, learning about the archives especially. And as I said before, we want feedback, we want constructive criticism, We want to think about service improvement, like what are ways that we can make things easier to help people more. We ensure collaborations to meet aims and we deliver value. So again, not everyone is going to be that direct about, how you can improve your services or how you can be a better archivist. So sometimes you do need some of that um, emotional intelligence to be able to like read the subtext of the room and to become a better archivist and provide better services. So a lot of this is, I mean, all of this is about building bonds. So using patience, trust, reliability, or making sure that we deliver on promises that we make. Sometimes, I kind of under promise and over deliver, or I give myself more time so I'm early. And, I think sometimes I'm just really thinking about how to position the work that I'm doing so people like see its value. And that's part of building the bonds, building some trust, and you're solidifying your reputation as dependable. Not to say that archivists aren't dependable. I think we're extremely dependable, but just showing that we say what we do and we're showing it again, just showing the value of archives rather than telling. It's all about the practice of archives. So we need a little bit of partnership prowess. So thinking about, again, common goals, nurturing relationships, um, uh, thinking about the influence of services, for example, like how can we make better services? These are all ways that we can kind of help with partnerships and being a better collaborator. And we want to empower the future. So I think archivists sit at a really unique position within an organization because we see the past, the present, and the future. We're looking at everything. We're looking at all different departments because we're not necessarily, I mean, we are perhaps under another department, but we see the organization fully. We see how it interacts, especially with information sharing and records management and archival management. So we can really think about kind of cross-functional alliances across these departments, like how people work with each other. How can we help maybe this department work better with this department with the information that they need? And all of this kind of drives future success. So anytime we can collaborate more strongly, advocate for ourselves within our organization, advocate for our archives, the work that we do, it just builds kind of a better future for the archives program. And I think that's what I've always kind of emphasized is kind of the sustainability of what we're doing. Unfortunately, a lot of archival work is precarious. Not every department stays the same. Sometimes departments shrink, sometimes they shut down entirely, sometimes they grow. Um, I've certainly been in all different organizations where there's been, a lot of growth, a lot of shrinkage too. So it is really important to think about what you're doing now to be sustainable in the future and to show that value and again, embed yourself into the organization by collaborating. And then by doing that, the subtext of all of that is advocating internally for your archives program.
Awesome. Thank you, Margot, for the wonderful presentation. And if you would like, please feel free to visit our website and get a copy of Margot's most recent book with Lucidea Press, Preserve, Promote, Persevere, The Archivist's Guide to Internal Advocacy. And if you'd like to learn more about our archival collections management system called Archivera, please feel free to visit our website as well, or reach out to us at sales@lucidea.com, and we'd be happy to have a chat with you. If you have any more questions about any of our software or our company, our contact details are listed on the screen, and please stay tuned for more webinars and content related to the series. On behalf of the Lucidea team, I thank you all for attending today, and until next time, thank you.